Okay, here we are back again. Let's do a little bit of a review. I'm trying to sell anybody who's interested on the proposition that guys who lived 60, 80, even 100 years ago had certain techniques of hitting that could be very helpful to those of us today who want to do what they were so good at doing, which is making contact with the ball and getting on base. Seems to have become a lost art. I don't even have a bat that's really long enough to replicate something that would have been used in that time. I've got a 34 here. It's about as long as you're going to find. Guys in the 20s and the teens of the previous century were easily could find a lot of 36-inch bats or even longer. The technique that I'm trying to reprise from those days, the most important thing is what I call level and lever. I've never heard anybody else call it this, but it's good shorthand for me because it describes exactly what's going on. I know that you guys have seen players, and probably most of you yourselves have done that drill where you go up against the backstop or up against a wall or some kind of structure and you try to stay within the ball. But I don't think that drill is very helpful unless you're doing the things with your hands that allow you to produce an elliptical swing instead of a circular swing. That's really what staying inside the ball is all about, and that's what level and lever is all about. You're using your bottom hand to, first of all, to level the bat, and then I call it levering. It's kind of like pulling on a lever. You're actually pulling back with the bottom hand as your top hand is driving through. And that replicates that high finish with the hands in that position that I find in so many old photographs. I know this is the way guys used to swing, even though I can't really study a lot of videos up close because you see the swing in different stages, and the photographs are showing exactly that sort of follow through. The top hand, of course, is key. This is actually what I call a drive swing. You're driving off the backside. I'm emphasizing the front side, mostly because this is what the bottom hand needs to do to kind of get out of the way and let the top hand drive through. The bottom hand levels and then it levers to generate a little extra velocity, but it's the top hand that is powering through once the bat is leveled off. It's driving as the bottom hand is sort of pulling in. There's my high finish. I didn't emphasize this before, but it needs to be emphasized that the bat must be in the knocker knuckles of that top hand, and you want to get that hand to almost be parallel with the ground. You want to get it down. You don't want it up here, obviously. You need to level it off. I like to think of the heel of that top palm as almost pointing toward the guy who's on deck. I don't know that you can really do that, but in the back of my mind I like to kind of have that image where I'm really trying to get that heel almost out in front of the bat, because that's going to keep me from doing this, grabbing the bat tightly, tensing my wrist, wrapping my thumb around the bat. All of those things are going to keep me from pushing through and finishing high the way I want to. They're going to lock me up. Hands are the most important thing. I think you could probably stand in a barrel and use that hand motion that I was just talking about and probably hit 300. Or it's such a lost art, as I say, with the metal bats and skinny little handles, and everybody now wears batting gloves, and there's so many things that have affected the way that hitters hold on to the bat. We've really gotten away from anything approaching the way that a Ty Cobb or a Tris Speaker or an Eddie Collins would have held the bat. I don't want to be long-winded. I've just talked about feet, but quickly to recapitulate, I've seen so many photographs where guys in the days of yore had their toes kind of cocked, and especially the front foot sort of pointed toward the pitcher's mound. I think the back foot, when you're pushing off from, and that's why the front foot is pointed toward the mound, so you can clear a channel for the back foot and the backside to power through. You just want that front side to get out of the way. Even if you're going to do something with the front foot before you unload with your swing, you want that foot to come down with the toes pointed toward the pitcher so the back side can drive through. And I actually like to have the back toes pointed a little bit out toward the field too. I talked about getting that Z effect where you go from toe to heel, into knee, up to thigh. Is sort of making a Z with the back side, and that's what you're going to thrust off of. Don't really think it, for our purposes, matters that much. What you want to do with the front foot, you don't really have to do anything. Joe DiMaggio didn't move his front foot at all, and I think he was another exemplar of this kind of style. I'm going to talk more about footwork in the rest of this video. I'm also going to mention some things that yesteryear's hitters did that I wouldn't necessarily do myself, but I don't necessarily think that they're bad either. I think it's just a matter of style. I think maybe they've been given a black eye for no very good reason. But one thing that a lot of people give me grief over is the mention that I made of turning the toes out toward the pitcher. A lot of kids and a lot of coaches would say, hey, you definitely don't want to do that because it's going to make you're opening up and you're pulling off the ball. And I'm going to return to that too, as I say, especially right at the end of this video. I'm going to address footwork again in some detail and look at some hitters from the day. But I just want to say right now, that's simply not true. If you're swinging from your backside, if you're using this drive swing that I'm talking about, the lever and lift, then you can actually reach the outside corner better if you have the feet a little bit open and you're going right out there with that top hand. If you're pulling the bat down with your bottom hand as you cock that elbow and drive down with your top hand, obviously you better keep those toes squared to the plate, because best case scenario is you're still going to be undercutting the ball when you go out there. This way, as long as you got that top hand giving you the power and you got the heel of that palm pointing up, you got that level swing going out there, I can't think of a better way to get to the outside corner and hit line drives to the opposite field. I can't really think of any other way to do it. The one other point that I wanted to get into this discussion was about the so-called hitch. The hitch is supposed to be one of the things that you don't do when you swing. It's supposed to take you extra long. Well, nobody does this when the ball is in the air. You don't, unless you're playing slow pitch softball, you don't do this. I'm sure that even Mel Ott, when he was swinging, he had a swing like that. But he was probably here when the pitch was being released. What about a hitch is that you're doing all this to get ready, and then you're not. This is all you have to do to pull the trigger, is push the top hand through. This is your moment of decision right here. You can hold up after you've already leveled the bat off with your bottom hand. So, in that respect, a hitch is probably speeding up the swing. Getting everything ready before you have to make that final decision, and all you have to do to make the final decision is just drive through with the top hand. Jimmy Fox had a hitch, and watch his front toes go straight toward the mound. And here's a famous photograph of the little photographed Josh Gibson, which reminds me so much of Willie Mays. Hopefully you can make out that his, hate to keep repeating myself, but his top finger on his bottom hand is very loose on the bat, as are his finger and thumb on the top hand. He's going to, I think, just with those bottom fingers on the bottom hand, he's going to lever the bat out and drive through with a hard punch of the top hand. He's in that gathering crouch around his core, and he's got a very strong core. He must have been a terrifically strong man. He's going to, with a pretty steep hitch, very similar to what we find in Jimmy Fox. He's going to gather the bat into his diaphragm, and he's going to drive right at the ball. An incredibly strong hitter. So obviously here's a case where, again, where a hitter is using this drive style, and he's not a lightweight hitter. Both of them had their top hand in close to the armpit. They didn't do any of this with the elbow up and bat over the shoulders right here. They had a kick, but when the kick came down, they had gathered their muscles in their diaphragm in, and they were ready to fire out that top hand like throwing a punch. And I think that's the point of a kick, at least to the great classic hitters like those two. Just to gather the muscles in, and then you don't have their toes turned out like I was modeling before, but maybe you don't have to do that. Maybe the kick is one of the ways that you avoid that. It's another way to get as much as you can into that punch without lifting my head up or letting my hands ride back up. I'm just going right at the ball. And that's the important point, because if you're going to thrust with your top hand into the ball, you've got to get that hand to stay where you lower it. You've got to keep your head down, and when your foot comes down, you're ready to drive right through. If there's anything about the hitch that slows the swing down and makes you pull off the ball, it's letting things ride back up like that. I'm not suggesting that a hitch is a good thing. I'm not recommending it, but I'm not going to do what so many coaches have done since the time, at least, that I was a kid, and say automatically that a hitch is a bad thing either. If the hitch is intended to bring the bat into a position where it's in these fingers and it's ready for that backhand to throw that punch, then hey, if it works for you, then why not do it? Personally, I don't really like hitch and swing because I feel that it gives me too much of an uppercut after I've dropped my hands. Uppercut swings tend to put topspin on the ball, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know that the magical word today is backspin, but topspin, if it's not excessive and if you hit the ball fairly levelly, it's going to send the ball right through the infield, hopefully, unless it's hit right at somebody. And in any case, when you're hitting right off your back shoulder, it may appear to be more of a uppercut swing than it really is. There's not very much backside of this ellipse, so if you're looking at somebody from the side, it may appear that he's swinging up at the ball, but he's short to the ball from back here, so he's, even if he's got his hands down here, he's still got to bring the handle down. In this part of the transit, the barrel is actually coming down on the ball a little bit. That's going to give you some backspin. Now I want to look at Ted Williams here in just a minute, and when I show you this video, I want you to not look at his hands because he's not really hitching, but look at his forward toe. He's going to be, I want to get back to that opening up the front side. Ted was, of course, the big exponent of using the front hip to generate power. I don't necessarily agree with the way that he explained it. I think it's not that the hip is dragging the forward hand through, not in his swing. He's very much of a backside drive hitter. Look at the video, he's getting that front side out of the way so that his backside can drive the bat through to the ball. And you'll see that right here. Okay, here's Ted Williams, smooth as silk. Look at the hips, yeah, the hands, but especially look at that front foot. The toes are pointed toward the pitcher. He's got that power lane open, and he's driving through. Okay, here are a few illustrations of what I was talking about. Evan Gattis, to start with, of the Braves. Really good extension here as he's following through. And I'm going to show you something about his hands in the next frame that is implied here, but you can't really make it out as well. This guy's a really pronounced drive hitter, really uses his backside to get at the ball. But look at this. As I bring his feet up on the screen, That's what I'm most interested in. There's no struggle in this guy's mind about what he wants to do with that front foot. He's pointing the toes out at the pitcher. He's opening up a free channel just to drive through with the backside. Now, here in this shot, you see that Gaddis has his hands spread too. And the hitters that I'm about to show you following this, that's a common denominator. I think that's very interesting that so many drive hitters like to spread those hands. I doubt that they're getting in touch with a bunch of guys who played in 1940 to have that idea put in their heads. I think there's just something kind of natural about having a strong backside that makes you want to spread the hands a little bit and get a little more acceleration as the hands work with each other by kind of moving against each other. We talked about that in a previous video. But this fella's a powerful, powerful hitter. And there again, you can see from a different angle that his front toes are pointing toward the pitcher. He's not in any kind of funk about what he should do with that front foot. He just wants that side to open up, let the power through. Now we've got, oh boy, this is from Onion, so it actually says weak side and strong side, but that really has nothing to do with the points that I'm trying to make. Onion is having its little joke about some of the other elements in McCutcheon's life, but this is Andrew McCutcheon, and I liked this photo because you can look it up on Onion and see what the contrasts are. They have nothing to do with hitting style. I just like the fact that they've cut his silhouette out so sharply, and you can see a number of things that he's doing. He's actually, I think, one of the best examples of an old school hitter, a power hitter as well as a high average hitter, a guy who could have played 50 years ago and hit with the best of them. He's got the hands at his armpit. He's not cocking up that rear elbow. He's not, well, his I think, although it's a little hard to tell from many angles, but I think his rear foot is actually, there's a bit of a Z there in his leg. I think he's pointing the toes a little bit in toward the plate and the heel out toward the catcher. Of course, he's pigeon-toed, and he's got that front foot. He's going to stride in even farther toward the plate with that. But we'll see in the next frame what he proceeds to do with that front foot when he executes his swing. I just want to, again, show you. You're not going to see it here very well, but there is a little spread in his hands. He's got a bit of a crimp, a curl in the top wrist. This guy goes right at the ball with that powerful punch, probably better than anyone in contemporary baseball, with the possible exception of Matt Carpenter this year, whom I do not have in this sequence. But here's McCutcheon driving through, and you can see that even though he comes closed as he loads, there we go, I got his foot in the frame. I hope I do. You can see that the spikes are showing, his foot's coming up off the ground a little bit, but the toes clearly are, the foot is moved to point toward the pitcher. And there you can actually see, although this is kind of a blurry photograph, it's not the best that you can find, but you can perhaps make out a distinct space. I would say that's more than an inch between his top hand and his bottom hand. And actually the bottom hand, it seems to me that he's got his little finger and maybe another finger really fastened on the back, but it looks like the top fingers are pretty loose there. And a really good illustration of how the palm and the knuckles of the top hand are under the bat as he drives through. That's definitely something that you want to try to replicate. Now, the last two hitters, I think I can show you something that is a little bit of an imbalance, or maybe that's too strong a word. I should be so imbalanced as Prince Fielder. He's one of the great power hitters of our generation. He's got a really powerful follow through, of course. Got the top hand still on the bat here, although he doesn't do that consistently. I could just as easily find photographs where the top hand comes off the bat early, and I think maybe part of the reason for that is that his lead foot, I had a lot of trouble finding this photograph, but to varying degrees you can find shots that all of which show the same thing. His front foot tends to be somewhat angled in toward the plate, so he's using elements of that drag swing with the bottom hand, the front arm pulling down on the bat where the toes are supposed to stay pointed in toward the plate. He's I think he's mixing and matching there. He's a drive hitter. He wants to get that backside to work through powerfully. You can see in the upper half of this photograph that he's doing just that. And I'll bet you there's even a little space between his hands there. It's hard to tell with those big old hands he has and those gloves that are on them. Of course, from this angle, it would be hard to see anyway. But I think, despite the fact that he is clearly a drive hitter, and he and the young hitters of his generation have been told they're supposed to keep those toes turned in toward the plate. Now, here's a guy who's, it seems to me, is just really kind of as terrific a young prospect. He's more than a prospect. He's an all-star, but as terrific as Bryce Harper is, I think he is really kind of confused about what to do with his front foot. He is, if anybody in the game today is a drive hitter who's powering through with his backside, it's got to be Bryce Harper. But look at his bottom. Look at his feet, his legs. He clearly, ouch, that even looks painful to me. Looks kind of hard on the ankle. He's got his toes of the front foot pointed in toward the plate, even as he drives through. And it seems to me that he's found out that the only way he can do that is to... This is a pretty broad photograph. Let me pan over here a little bit. He has to take the back foot off the ground. He's got that Lou Gehrig kind of long stride. Somehow he gets the back foot off the ground while he's still, with the front leg, describing a very steep slope. Only Lou Gehrig could do that, but Lou Gehrig didn't have his toes pointed toward the plate. I don't know how Bryce holds together physically while he's doing this, but he's a young guy again, and I think this is the way the kids are taught. I think Bryce naturally is a drive hitter, but the teaching that he's absorbed is to be kind of a drag hitter, to drag the bat with his bottom hand, and that would make you keep the front foot pointed in toward the plate. And so he's kind of mixed two dissonant elements there. And here's an even, I mean, this doesn't look like one of his better swings. And that sort of awkwardness is surely bound to happen when a regular part of your swing is to come straight up on that front. Well, he doesn't come straight up on it, but he has so much of his weight transferred to it that his back foot is off the ground. This is fairly regular for Bryce. He's got his back foot well off the ground, like a Clemente or even Ruth. But again, they had their front toes pointed out toward the pitcher. They were opening up a channel for that back power to drive through. Bryce has to somehow work over that leg to get his power through, and I think the only way that his body has subliminally figured out how to do it is just to come up on that foot. And what do you know? There's a space, a really noticeable space, again, between the hands. He's done a good job, an excellent job of getting his palm under the bat. Classic drive hitter, power hitter. Looks great from the belt up, but he looks like he wants to be a different kind of hitter down there on the ground. Okay, here's a young man who's a case in point. He's, at the time this video was taken,
He was a high school senior, and he's got great hands. I love the explosive stroke. I love the high finish. And somehow, even though he's got that rear elbow cock, he's able to get that palm on the top hand to come down under the bat so that he can drive pretty straight at the ball, and he gets a much more level swing than I would have thought you could get with the bat on top of your shoulder like that. The only thing is that any coach is going to tell him that your head is moving too much. Every time he loads, his head dips down, and there's a risk that he's going to have trouble finding the ball. Now, the thing is, you often can't tweak a swing by just fixing one little thing. There's so many other things that are tied to it. The swing is so complex. And in this case, I think his head was dipping because he had to find a way to get up on his front leg. He has to get up on his front leg because he wants his toes pointing toward the plate. And he wants his toes pointing toward the plate because that's the swing that's taught, where you drive down with your top hand and then you drag through strongly with your bottom hand. You close up that front side.
Be on your toes.
I think this boy either needs to make a decision to drive strongly off the backside or just commit to that drag swing with emphasis on the front side. But he's in betwixt and between, and unfortunately, the hitting coach, who wasn't much older than he is, had him give up stabilize the head, but that didn't fix the other problems. It just moved the problems off in other directions. And he ended up becoming a real pop-up machine in his senior year, which wasn't good.
Would stress that body types are different for different people. And maybe this is one reason why things that seem to work for other people are not working for you. It may be a question of you're having unusual wrists like mine. I can't do a chin-up with my knuckles facing the way. I can't come all the way down. So don't feel like you're missing something or you're doing something wrong or you're a dope if you can't execute the perfect style that other guys are finding success with. It may be that it's not right for your body type. What I'm trying to suggest here is it's not something entirely new. In fact, it's very old. Most of these techniques are from the dead ball era, but they've been buried for so many years that we now have to try to rediscover them. And it's very likely that some of them may work for you. You just have to keep an open mind. You have to experiment. You have to draw conclusions from your experiments. You have to be smart. The Ray hitter is, he's got to be smart. That's all.